The Mudpuppy has one of the worst names in the animal kingdom for an animal that has never, not once, made a sound remotely close to a bark. There's a legend that ran for centuries that these things bark like dogs, and that's why they got saddled with the name. The truth is, they might manage a squeak under extreme duress, and that's being generous. What they actually are is a salamander that decided somewhere around 60 million years ago to stop growing up, and it turns out that decision tells us a lot about the water they live in right now. Most salamanders go through a juvenile phase where they have external gills, those feathery frills you see fanning out around their heads, and then they lose them as adults. Mudpuppies never do that. They keep their gills their whole lives and stay, biologically speaking, in a permanent larval state. The same thing happened independently to axolotls down in Mexico, and the two animals haven't shared a common ancestor for at least 90 million years. That's convergent evolution, two completely different lineages landing on the same solution. The current thinking is that both events connect back to the asteroid impact that wiped out the dinosaurs. When that thing hit, the water in those areas would have gone dark, cold, and oxygen poor in a hurry. The animals with bigger gills could pull more oxygen out of that bad water, and they survived. The ones that kept their gills into adulthood did even better. That history is still readable in mudpuppy populations today. In clean, well-oxygenated water, generations of mudpuppies develop with smaller gills. In low-quality water, generations develop with larger ones, growing the surface area they need to pull enough oxygen out of a struggling environment. The gill size of a local population tells you exactly what that water has been like for a long time. They're also almost completely blind, and that works out fine because they mostly live in dark, murky water anyway. What they have instead is pressure sensitivity across their entire body, similar to the lateral line that fish use to detect movement. Where we're only acutely sensitive to touch in specific spots like our hands and feet, a mudpuppy can feel something moving within striking distance anywhere along its body, and that's how they hunt. Reproduction is its own strange story. The female digs out a small cave under a rock, glues somewhere between 80 to 180 eggs to the ceiling of that cavity, and then stays put for about 40 days until they hatch, while the male is long gone. What makes their strategy unusual is the female can hold on to stored sperm all winter after mating in the fall, and then use it to fertilize her eggs when the conditions improve in the spring. Unlike crocodilians, where temperature during incubation determines whether an animal is male or female, mudpuppies have genetic sex determination. Once that egg is fertilized, the sex is fixed. Temperature doesn't enter into it. The mudpuppy stops being just an interesting animal and starts being a problem that affects everyone living near the Great Lakes when you look at what sea lamprey management has done to them. Sea lamprey invaded the Great Lakes starting in the 1920s and absolutely devastated the native fishery. The management response was to apply a chemical called TFM, trifluoromethyl, to the tributaries on a rotating basis to kill lamprey larvae. It works, but mudpuppies are also sensitive to it, and the kills have been significant. What makes that collateral damage complicated is what mudpuppies actually eat. Their primary diet includes rusty crayfish, round gobies, and zebra mussels, all three of which are invasive species, doing serious damage to the same ecosystem. The chemical killing the mudpuppy is also removing one native predator that was naturally keeping three separate invasions in check. When the mudpuppy population drops, those three species expand into the gap. There's a species called the salamander mussel that ties this whole thing together. It's the only freshwater mussel in North America that uses a non-fish host for its larval stage, and the only host it can use is a mudpuppy gills to be exact. No mudpuppies means no salamander mussels. That matters because freshwater mussels are the filtration system those rivers run on. Every 1,000 mussels filter about 2.8 million gallons of water per year, pulling out pharmaceuticals, heavy metals, bacteria, and excess nitrogen. Lose the mudpuppy, you lose the mussel, and you lose the clean water with it. It's a small, funny-looking, perpetually juvenile salamander that never barked a day in its life, and it turns out the whole system leans on it.